sounds of gentle waves lapping on a shore, which slowly morph into the creaking of a ship and distant, somber winds. Have you ever looked out at the ocean and wondered what stories it holds? What secrets are buried beneath its waves? Today, we journey back in time, to the sun-kissed coasts of West Africa, specifically to the shores of what we now call Nigeria. But this isn't a story of serene beaches and gentle trade winds. It's a story of how these shores became the departure point for one of history's darkest chapters. This is the story of the chains of the coast. From the 1500s all the way to the 1800s, a sinister trade cast long, terrifying shadows over this land. Millions of African men, women, and children were torn from their homes, their families, and everything they had ever known. Their journey into the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade began right here, at Nigerian ports like Bonny and Calabar. But how did this happen? What dark bargains were struck that sealed the fates of so many? Our story begins in 1472 with the arrival of Portuguese explorers. Initially, their interactions were about trade, bartering for coveted goods like pepper, ivory, and gold. It was a relationship of exchange. But as the 16th century dawned, a new insatiable demand emerged from across the Atlantic, a demand for labor to work the burgeoning plantations in the Americas. This demand twisted alliances and turned peaceful trade into a horrifying commerce of human lives. The region known as the Bight of Biafra became the epicenter of this trade. Two ports in particular rose to infamy. First there was Bonny, a kingdom ruled by powerful Ijo kings. Then there was Calabar, the heartland of the Efik people. These ports transformed into massive, horrifying hubs for the export of human beings. The vast majority of the captives funneled through these ports were from the Igbo hinterlands, captured in brutal wars, kidnapped during raids, or sometimes, tragically, betrayed by their own kin in complex local power struggles. Imagine the scene. European ships, their sails like ominous specters on the horizon, anchored just off the coast. On shore, African middlemen, who had their own complex motivations ranging from political power to personal profit, delivered their human cargo. These weren't just faceless numbers. They were individuals with names, families, and dreams. They were farmers, artisans, mothers, and fathers, now reduced to commodities. The currencies of this trade weren't coins, but goods that fueled further conflict: guns, gunpowder, textiles, and alcohol. This influx of weapons in particular created a vicious cycle, escalating local wars and ensuring a steady supply of captives for the ships waiting at the coast. The captives were held in nightmarish conditions in holding pens called barracoons. These were cramped, unsanitary enclosures where they awaited the dreaded arrival of the slave ships. Chained together, often for weeks or months, they endured unimaginable suffering even before their transatlantic journey began. They were branded with hot irons, marking them as the property of a particular merchant or company, a permanent scar of their dehumanization. The trade reached its terrifying peak in the 1780s. In that single decade, it's estimated that over 175,000 souls were forced onto ships departing from the Bight of Biafra alone. This wasn't a marginal activity. It was a massive, industrialized process of human trafficking. While kingdoms like Bonny and Calabar became deeply enmeshed and profited from this trade, other powerful empires, like the Kingdom of Benin, navigated this treacherous landscape with different strategies. For a time, Benin's rulers famously refused to sell male captives to the Europeans, demonstrating that African responses to this European demand were not monolithic. There was agency, negotiation, and a complex web of decisions that historians are still working to untangle. Then came the Middle Passage, the journey across the Atlantic. It's a part of the story so horrific it's difficult to put into words. Packed into the suffocating darkness of the ship's hold, chained side by side, the captives faced a voyage of pure terror. Disease, malnutrition, and brutality were rampant. The air was thick with the stench of death and despair. The mortality rate was staggering. It's estimated that up to 2 million people died during the crossing alone, their bodies unceremoniously thrown into the ocean. Yet, even in the face of such overwhelming cruelty, the human spirit of resistance refused to be extinguished. defiance flickered like a stubborn flame in the darkest of nights. On the ships there were countless uprisings, desperate bids for freedom against impossible odds. And back on the coast, the enslaved did not always suffer in silence. In old Calabar, a powerful revolt known as the Blood Men Uprising saw enslaved people rise up against their Efik masters in the 1800s. These were cries for freedom, echoes of rebellion that reverberated through the chains and the fear, a testament to the enduring will to be free. As we look back, it is easy to cast this atrocity as a simple story of European greed forging this tragedy alone. And while European demand was the undeniable engine of the transatlantic slave trade, the full picture is more complex. We must also acknowledge the roles of African middlemen and rulers, the internal politics, and the devastating choices made under immense pressure. At the same time, we must celebrate the stories of resistance, the acts of defiance, big and small, that proved humanity could never be fully conquered. The trade was officially abolished in the 19th century, but its legacy is not a relic of the past. Its scars have shaped nations, economies, and cultures on both sides of the Atlantic. The echoes of this history can still be felt today in conversations about race, identity, and justice. The full horrors remain, in many ways, unspoken, and the stories of millions of individuals have been lost to the depths of the ocean. So, the next time you see the ocean, think of this. In the depths off the coast of Bonny and Calabar, what lost voices from the Middle Passage still cry out to be heard? What stories are waiting to be told? This history belongs to all of us, and it's our shared responsibility to remember it, to learn from it, and to ensure such an atrocity never happens again. Thank you for joining me on this difficult but important journey. If this story moved you, please share your reflections in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the stories that have shaped our world. Until next time, stay curious and never stop learning.